The great Hale McGranahan joins us from BigSpur.com. Hey, man.
I don't know if I meet many of those attributes you just listed there, but thank you.
Well,
Sure.
Handsome is fine. Buff, right? You know, I don't know.
From what we could see, you could be all those things, Hale.
You're very handsome, Hale.
It's in the eye of the beholder, much like talent evaluation. It's in the eye of the beholder.
Yes.
My wife is apparently not a very good talent evaluator. If we're being serious,
Right? Yeah, mine either.
You got all that right there. This is what you get. Hale, glad to have you. Good to see you. Glad you survived the snowstorm of 25 last week and lived to tell about it. But It did affect Junior Day for Carolina. I had to cancel that. What are they doing about it?
Just going to see who they can get to come in some other time later on down the road. They already had one scheduled for the final Saturday of the month, so they'll have that one. And there'll be other opportunities to get these guys on campus. Most of the names we'd known about and talked about, written about on the site, have already been in. So it's not like they were missing out on an opportunity. I mean, I'm sure there was probably somebody out there who would have been visiting for the first time, but not the worst thing in the world, but certainly not ideal. There was a little bit that went on. There were a couple guys who did actually visit. One, Deontay Seals, a 2027 defensive end, edge, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call him. He and his family had already left from the Birmingham area and decided to just stay, and they visited with the coaches on Saturday. Wasn't a junior day, obviously, but just a little bit of a visit. And then Jaiden Bryant, another 2027 defensive end, edge, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call him, came down from Irmo and was offered. They wanted him to come down and be able to do that face to face. So there was a little bit of action last Saturday, but certainly not nearly as much as they'd hoped to have.
It's early. 2027. Man, we are getting old in a hurry. Woo! Wow. All right. We'll dabble a little bit more in some of these junior guys or whatever. But the big news, the immediate help is Brandon Ceesay, the NC State corner out of Sumter. And of course, you've reported about this on the Big Spur, and hopefully by now most everybody has been able to read your reporting. I think it was yesterday morning you put some VIP stuff out. But in watching, did you ever, by the way, just out of curiosity, aside from film, do you remember watching him play? Did you ever see any NC State games? And because I know you, obviously, being a recruit in this state, obviously, clearly you knew who he was. Did you ever follow his career at all?
A little bit. I certainly don't have any like specific recollections of watching NC State games. I hadn't watched a ton over the last 2 years, but definitely remembered him and knew of him, and honestly kind of wondered if South Carolina should have offered him while he was still in high school. But yeah, I did kind of keep an eye on him, like you said, in-state guy, and I knew who he was, so I sort of kept my eye on him, so to speak.
All right, what's his impact? The immediate impact for Ceesay at South Carolina?
Yeah, he's going to compete for a starting spot, and the interesting thing will be is which one. Will it be cornerback, where he's played a lot, or nickel, or dime? He played a lot of dime as like a second inside cornerback for NC State, and played some nickel as well as the third corner, and then played on the outside too. So he's got versatility, and that'll be the interesting part. JB is what his flexibility can allow Clayton White, Torian Gray to do with like Jalen Kilgore, who's been the starting nickel for most of the last year and a half or so. And he started out at safety, as we all remember, coming in for Nick Emmanwori 2 years ago. So will he slide back to safety and Ceesay go inside, or does Ceesay stay outside and somebody else goes inside? They've got a lot of different scenarios that they could put into action, and that's going to be the fun part with following this secondary post Nick Emmanwori and O'Donnell Fortune, who were clearly impact players for multiple years for those guys.
You mentioned the playing dime. I didn't grow up with this guy. Growing up, I knew a guy from a rival high school. They called Dimebag Brandon. These two guys are not related, are they?
Why did they call? I don't think so. Why did they call him Dimebag Brandon?
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
Oh, you can figure it out, Hale. You're a smart guy.
Was he a good player? Was he one of those types like?
No, he didn't play baseball.
Huh?
No, I didn't. I wasn't associated with this guy. I just happened to know who he was.
I didn't know if he was like one of those guys who was like a stud, and if he just had a good head on his shoulders, he would have made something of himself as a player.
I don't know whatever happened to that cat.
Okay, probably not
then. Yeah, he wasn't generally invited where we were. But one of the things that I thought was interesting in your report, now that I've thrown everybody off here, and you know, I said this yesterday. In addition to your reporting, our friends over at Gamecock Central made it a point as well. Like, this has been very well documented. South Carolina beat Ole Miss out for him, and which is outstanding. Obviously, he is from right down the street, so he's a local kid. But why is that such a point of emphasis, Hale?
I don't know if it's necessarily a point of emphasis. Like, hey, let's see how many guys we can beat Ole Miss and get. Okay. It's just kind of how it has played out, and you know, Lane Kiffin sort of invites the controversy and drama and shit talking wherever he goes. It doesn't matter who it is, like whether it's Shane Beamer, South Carolina, or you know, whoever. Like he's gonna fan the flame, so to speak. But it is big from the standpoint of like you do play those guys again next year, so and you got to go to their place, and you know they're going to be good, so you want to have as many good players as possible. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big deal. And if you're looking at it from the recent standpoint of whether it's Juice Wells or Andrew Jones, the linebacker who flipped from South Carolina to Ole Miss, the mm-hmm. Grambling transfer. I guess there are those things as well, but yeah, I guess you could say it's important because you got to play them and they're going to be pretty good.
All right, but you also made it a point, and I'm so thankful you did this. We mentioned this yesterday in your VIP intel to state that Ole Miss also was recruiting linebacker Sean Murphy, who initially began his career at Alabama before he transferred to Florida State, and of course now he's in Columbia. And then linebacker Justin Okoronkwo, who has transferred from Alabama directly to the University of South Carolina. Do you know at what extent Ole Miss was after those guys? Were they just offers? Were they hot and heavy on the recruiting trail? Just trying to gauge here what South Carolina has been able to achieve in the portal.
I don't know as much of the details. I mean, I do know that Okoronkwo, that I'm pretty sure the only place he visited was South Carolina. I don't know for sure with Murphy where he went other than visiting South Carolina. I can't remember. And it's been a few weeks now since he signed, so I don't remember all the details because so much has happened since then. But yeah, I mean, apparently Ole Miss wanted him, and they've done a good job to their credit of signing good transfers on both sides of the ball. It's not just on offense. Like we all know they were pretty good on defense last year too. So they've done a good job of identifying good players and doing what it takes to get them. So I guess it's a big deal when you can go compete with them from the standpoint of like they're going to do what it takes, like I said. So apparently they had a strong offer for Brandon Ceesay, maybe a little stronger than South Carolina's, but they're able to get that one done. So yeah, I mean they go after good players too, and you got to feel good about winning recruiting battles against teams on your schedule, especially if you find that you don't really like them.
Have we noticed at this point, Hale, a direct relationship between NIL offerings and proximity to home at this point? Is there enough data that says, some guys are just looking to be a little closer to home, so they'll take a little less from an NIL perspective than, just teams who go out there with blank checks? I guess
every case is different, Phil. I mean, Ceesay staying closer to home, obviously. So, he could be different than the next guy who pops up. and fits some of that criteria. So I don't know. I think it's just a case by case basis, and I don't know if there is anyone who's put that type of data together and try to extrapolate it from there. But yeah, I think it's just for the most part a case by case basis.
So, and I know a lot of these conversations, like Hale, if we have you on every week, we're going to ask a question like this, either the same one or a very similar one every week when it comes to the transfer portal, about addressing their needs and this, that, and the other. You look at the rankings, Carolina 13th in the portal rankings right now, but those are so skewed because you go to the portal because you need something. Some teams don't need as much as others. So when you look at this class, if you actually go by like the player rating system, Carolina's 11th for what that's worth. Let's have a conversation about that a little bit. Like how do you, I know that you don't do it, like you don't go in and rate these guys yourselves necessarily, but like, what is the process for 24/7 or any other outlet out there to put a rating on these guys? If they had a high school rating, or at least most of them did, or a lot of them did, and then they play for a couple of years. Like, can you provide any insight to that? So when a guy's an 88 versus another guy, I mean, how do we know how legitimate some of this is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. I'm not part of those conversations. If you guys could get on like Cooper Patagna, one of the ratings guys for 24/7, I know he does a lot of the transfer portal stuff,
write that down,
ratings and all that. So I can't speak too much to that process because I genuinely don't know. It comes up on the board a lot, and that's really all I can say. Aside from maybe try to ask those guys to see what they can share. I mean, they have a lot of, like, when guys are coming out as high school recruits, they try to round up as much like data as possible, whether that's height, weight, whatever, arm length, hand size, not just like stats from their games, 40 times, all that obvious combine stuff, and make sure that it's verified and legitimate information, and not just like, hey, it might be right, it might not be. They have a lot of information that goes into it. So I think they try to use some of that and base it on what the guy's done in college, his production and how he's looked. Like, they certainly do watch tape. It's not just about crunching numbers and looking at spreadsheets. Like, they do watch film, contrary to what some might believe. But the thing that I kind of wonder about, and I think is a good question to ask, is how they try to finalize it, because that's one thing people need to keep in mind, whether it's portal rankings or high school rankings. Like, we might see some numbers right now for like the class of 2026 high school guys. Well, just because a guy's, ranked number 50 in the country right now, he could go up or down. And it's the same thing with the transfer guys. Like, they will finalize their rankings and ratings when the portal window's shut. At least that's how it's happened in the past. And I don't know what it's going to look like this year. But it'll evolve a little bit. Probably not a lot. I mean, there might be in some cases, there might be some big movement, but it'll evolve, and how that takes shape. Again, I don't know the specifics. I'm just kind of basing some of what I said off of how it's gone in the past. So as far as like the specifics they're looking for with a guy who's like a Justin Okoronkwo, who played, only 39 defensive snaps, versus Brandon Ceesay, who played like 500 this year or whatever. Like, how do you weigh production and upside and all that stuff, and how heavily are you considering the high school rating as well? So yeah, all that to say, I don't know. I wish I could give you some more specifics beyond what I said.
I think that as time goes along, that process will probably get a little bit cleaner. I mean, every staff has a different, like we talked to Darren Usher, for instance, on how they do things at South Carolina. They watch this thing all year long. So
yeah,
when a kid gets in the portal, they already know who he is. It's not like, oh man, the linebacker just got in from Alabama, let's go see what he's all about. He said, you're late if that's your mentality.
Right.
You got to know who these kids are. Real quick here, and we'll come back to this here in a little bit and talk more about it in an hour or two. Some breaking news out of college football, a little bit surprising. Quinn Ewers is headed to the NFL. He is declared for the draft. So it looks like Arch Manning will be in charge next year in Austin, Texas. And that'll throw some competition in there for old Lenora Sellers to be the face of the league. Bunch of quarterbacks, but when you get Manning, that's certainly going to come up a bunch. Back though to South Carolina and the transfer portal, where do you feel to this point that, because the portal's about addressing your needs, where have they not addressed their needs, and how close are they to doing so in your opinion?
I guess you could say kicker is a need. I mean, folks have been pretty spoiled around here with how good that position has been over the years. I think you guys were talking about it earlier this week, I believe, when I was listening.
For 20 years. Almost.
Yeah, you go back to talking about Suck Up earlier. It kind of
right.
Josh
Brown.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And other than like a couple games of Alexander Wozniak from Eastside High School, it was awesome for like 10 years straight, literally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Herrera, he missed some big kicks. Some of them were like long kicks. So like, that's one thing maybe people should consider with him before they, kick too much dirt on his name. He did miss some very long kicks. But we'll see if Carolina's able to get a kicker from the portal. It's a challenging thing to do. I mean, they lost one last year, and I don't know of many guys beyond Mitch Jeter who transferred to another school last year who were, worth considering for South Carolina, as a replacement for the 2024 season. So I think they're entertaining it for 25, and I don't know of any names or if they're anywhere close to getting on anyone. So that's potentially need. Could probably use another veteran wide receiver. I don't think they would turn down another defensive tackle by any means, or a pass rusher for that matter. And beyond that, I mean, maybe running back if you're looking for a fifth guy from a scholarship standpoint, because that's kind of the targeted number. But yeah, I mean, the roster is not totally set, but it's pretty close, assuming there's not any, surprise departures from the current team and during the spring portal window.
But yeah, it sounds like what you're describing here is a couple things that they're looking for it. The others are more of a case by case basis. Like, man, he's too good not to take. We take him. Like, they don't have to have a wide receiver or a running back, but if they find one and he's just too good to not offer and take, then you do it. But it's not like that's a major priority. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, I think you could say that. I mean, it was sort of along those lines in a way at linebacker with Okoronkwo and cornerback with Ceesay. I mean, obviously they don't have a lot of experience at linebacker returning or coming in with 4 freshmen, obviously. But, when a guy like Okoronkwo gets in the portal and you have a shot to get him, like, you don't walk away from that. Same with Brandon Ceesay. So yeah, if there's a receiver who gets in that they feel they have a good shot at getting, then they'll try to go get him. I mean, that could be happening right now with some of the names that have kind of emerged from Penn State, one in particular. I don't think he's officially in yet, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. And I don't know if Carolina would even be a factor for this guy, but you just never know until a name pops in and we start seeing what happens. That's kind of how it goes with this stuff.
You said a transfer from Penn State. Is
Yeah.
that what you said? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not trying to get you to divulge any information. I'm just, for the audience out there, if they see something come up, maybe that'll give them a little bit of a tip. But we're not even sure if he's in the portal, so we'll move on there. Let's talk about Torian Gray, because Brandon Ceesay is the flavor of the week when it comes to the portal. And this guy, since he's been in South Carolina, has done nothing but develop elite dudes that go to the NFL. They perform well. I was looking at the roster the other day. yesterday, as a matter of fact, the way that this came up was the question, well, why didn't they recruit him in the 2023 class, which none of us necessarily have the answer to that. Maybe I don't know. But they did sign a bunch of dudes in the 2023 class. There was 5 total in the secondary. Of course, a couple of those guys are gone now. But when you think about Torian Gray, Hale, and covering his tenure in Columbia since he came on board with Shane a few years ago, how do you describe how important he's been to Gamecock football?
He's been incredibly important, I guess. I don't know how else to say it other than like Nick Emmanwori. He offered him. DQ Smith is another guy who's played more than 700 snaps. DQ Smith has played more snaps than anyone at South Carolina since he got here. And those guys didn't have any other Power 5 offers.
It's crazy.
DQ Smith was a quarterback. It's pretty good valuation. Judge Collier, who played just about every position imaginable at Legion Collegiate in Rock Hill, not even a school anymore, I think, or maybe they don't play football anymore. I can't remember. He might have had a couple other Power 5 offers. I can't remember for sure off the top of my head. Vakari Swain, who was a safety and a receiver mostly in high school, and I think their primary competition for him was Vanderbilt, and he's become a really good player. Yeah. This time a year ago, I was a little concerned about what the cornerback recruiting was like, how it was going with South Carolina, because we just hadn't seen many of them, and some of that was a testament to Torian Gray and Clayton White and the entire coaching staff for being able to keep guys like O'Donnell Fortune and Marcellus Dial and Darius Rush around and be able to count on them and not have to worry about bringing in new players. But now that we're starting to see more of those Torian Gray evaluated recruits becoming players and starters and difference makers and soon to be high round NFL draft picks. He's been huge. There's a reason why that team was so good in 2024 and the defensive coaching staff and being able to retain some of the guys from the previous regime and integrate their own evaluations and develop those guys. It's been a great thing. South Carolina having Torian Gray, no doubt, and I think there's a lot to be excited about with the secondary.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it's rare, but it's certainly, every coach out there doesn't have the trait that Torian has, and being able to squeeze all the juice out of whatever type player he's got. For instance, some guys have to recruit talent to coach talent. Some guy, I'm not saying that they didn't recruit talent. Clearly they did. You don't offer a guy that's not talented to play in the SEC. But, Torian reminds me a lot actually of Brad Lawing, but just different position groups. You bring a guy in and you understand that these guys are able to understand who that player is in the timeline in which that player should be developed to be able to help the football team, how much they should be thrown in the fire to help the football team. If time affords that. Sometimes you just got to play a guy. You don't have any choice, right? Some guys develop, Hale, as you've seen over the years, really talented football players, and they just really never get that much better. But Brad was always so good at taking the best player and making him realize how much better he could actually be. You're not there. And then taking the guy that wasn't near where that best player is and getting him to almost the same level, maybe minus a little bit of ability as far as being a fundamental football player. It was something to watch. I feel like Torian Gray is one of those guys. It's baffling to me. He was kind of a fall guy, if you will, at Florida, right? When all that stuff happened, Shane was like, give them to me, man. And now here's this group that they can compete with just about anybody out there.
Yeah, those guys are all. Judge Collier. For anyone who's seen him up close and in person, if you saw him just walking down the street and you're like, he plays football, what position does he play? and you said cornerback, you'd be like, damn, that's a big ass cornerback. Like that dude he's huge.
He's jacked.
He's a big dude. Vakari Swain is just incredibly talented and has a lot of characteristics that have that staff excited about what he can be, and why so many people were complaining about Vakari Swain not being a receiver when he was a freshman at Carolina, and like that's how talented he is. It's like he could be a really good wide receiver, and like those were valid arguments those people were making. Nick Emmanwori is like a freak when he does the combine stuff and all that. Like he's going to put up insane numbers because that's what he did coming out of high school, and it's amazing that he didn't have more offers than he did. I guess that was kind of a result of him coming through when COVID was doing its thing and making everything kind of jacked up. Yeah, I mean, DQ Smith is like criticized by a lot of folks, and some of it I think is just people kind of remembering when he was playing nickel and that wasn't going so well. I mean, he's obviously given up some plays at safety, and those just kind of get magnified. He's as smart and he's pretty talented and physically gifted as well too. So then like Jalua Solomon, who knows? Like we haven't really talked a lot about him here lately, where everybody's getting excited about the portal guys, and for good reason. But that was a big get. David Busey just quietly was one of the most consistent special teams players on the entire team last year. He's probably
up on you.
Yeah, he's probably going to play some more on defense this year. Kelvin Hunter, who was another really good in-state evaluation, who I really like and think is going to be a good player with time as well. So, and I think naming those couple guys right there. I mean, South Carolina has not to this point at least really gone after any safeties in the portal here in the last few weeks. So it's probably because they feel really good about those guys and what they have coming behind DQ Smith and Jalen Kilgore. And Torian Gray offered Jalen Kilgore. He didn't even have a 24/7 profile. His only offer at the time when South Carolina offered was like Southwest Missouri State or somebody like that. So the man can evaluate. I think probably could have saved a lot of talking and wasting of air by saying Torian Gray is just a hell of an evaluator. I mean, that's the best way to sum it up.
You speaking of Gray, and you mentioned the safeties, diving into the 26 class, not trying to dance all over the place on you here, but Tamarian Watkins from Northwestern. Of course, I can just call Paige and find out pretty much whatever I need to find out about him. But what do you know about this kid as a football player and South Carolina's chances of bringing him in? Is he a guy they want?
Oh yeah, he's a big guy too. He's kind of similar to Emmanwori, and like if folks remember when he was coming out of Irmo, like the great debate was, is he going to play linebacker or is he going to be a safety? And Watkins is a bigger guy. Can't remember his exact height and weight off the top of my head, but he stands out on the football field when you see him play in person. I saw him at the state championship game at South Carolina State last month, and you notice him just looking out there. His helmet's a little bit higher than everybody else's. And Georgia has offered him as an inside linebacker. I think South Carolina is on him as a safety. So yeah, he's legit, man. He's a really good player. He's supposed to be on campus in Columbia next weekend for that junior day.
Isn't there there's another safety?
Contavious, the kid from Dorman. We were talking about last week. Yeah.
Anderson. Yeah. They're on him too, right?
Yep, they are. He's visited a couple times as well. Clemson offered him recently. I think he got an offer from Kentucky this morning. He plays a lot of nickel and like outside linebacker, however you want to phrase it for the high school level. Sam linebacker, I don't know, but he's more of like a nickel type of player, so probably a safety as well. Who's really good too. I mean, I said last week with JC when we were talking about it that the DB class in 2026 in South Carolina and North Carolina for that matter is really good, and those two guys are certainly a part of it.
The 26 class, of course, they're well underway in recruiting that right now. Are the Gamecocks. It's fair to have this conversation every so often. It can get, if you're having it every week, I guess it could get a little tiresome. But about this time last year, there was a lot of hype around it. It was early in that class. The Currents kid who's the number one player in the state committed to Carolina. We just mentioned Anderson, and you get the running back in Spartanburg and McGill. You get all kinds of guys. A bunch of offensive linemen and stuff. I know they're going to re-rank all these dudes here soon. 24/7. We'll have more rankings out. But as it stands now here in January of 2025, how would you characterize the 26 in-state recruiting class? Not just for South Carolina, I mean the talent overall.
Yeah, it's deep. I mean, there are a lot of good players and some guys who don't really have a ton of offers right now, who I think are, at least worth considering if you're South Carolina. I'm not saying that they should offer anybody specifically, but like there's a kid at White Knoll, a receiver, who also plays DB. His last name is Geronimi. He's got an older brother, but I think the 2026 one's name is Caleb. I think Caleb Geronimi is like the guy who I'm referencing here. Don't want to mix him up with his brother, but he's a really good player. I mean, and there are a few other like that who just don't have many or any offers right now, who are guys that are going to be getting college offers and will have stars at some point along the way, and it'll just add to my point of saying that it's a deep class, and there's also the top end type of talent too. Like there won a ton of top end, national level talent in the 2025 in-state class, whereas this 26 class, but the 25 class was deep and had a lot of good players, just not a ton of elite guys. Whereas this 26 class, I think, has more elite guys and is probably going to be every bit as deep. So, so yeah, a lot of good players to go around in South Carolina right now. For sure.
I'm excited for you. I think that's going to be great for camp when you're covering camp and stuff this summer, seeing all these guys. I mean, you're going to know who a lot of them are, but as you pointed out, there's going to be a lot of dudes, probably in-state guys who show up you'll be familiar with, and you're like, wow, haven't seen that kid play since the fall. But, man, that's going to be interesting.
Happens every year, for sure.
Well, what also happens every year is the national championship. Hale, we got to get you out of here, but we certainly want to get a pick. I mean, you're an expert at these things. I think you've gotten it with it. You've gotten the winner for every year for the last 10 plus years, and it's been within 3 or 4 points of the score. What do you think happens on Monday night?
I don't know where you're getting that information from, but it sounds like fake news to me.
Nah.
Misinformation, maybe.
You got Penn State or Notre Dame?
Penn State. You mean Ohio State?
I mean Ohio State. Yeah. Ohio State. Or I was wishing it was Penn State. You get the point. Ohio State or Notre Dame?
Well, I guess I'm probably going to have to take Ohio State because they're the favorite and they've been steamrolling everybody, and you didn't say their name, so just to get under your skin, I guess I'll say Ohio State, even though I think Notre Dame's defense is pretty legit, and they run the ball really well, and I think that's going to make it a good game. But I guess I'll go Ohio State. I don't know. I mean, I'm so bad at picking games. I'm really not good. Like a lot of people who I've come across over the years are like, "Oh, you're a sports reporter. You must be really good at gambling." Like, no, I suck. Just like everybody else, so I have no idea. I don't know.
We're not. We can't all be as good as Mad Dog,
Yeah, well,
he specializes in these things.
I did finish over 500.
Okay, well, hey, I mean, I'm pretty good at picking Carolina winners. I did well at that this year, so getting them wrong or right, one way or the other, however you want to say it, I have the same record as the Gamecocks did picking their games.
Did you really?
Yeah,
9-4.
Not preseason, just during the season. Preseason, I said 6-6, which was way off. But when we're in the throes of it,
wow, not too shabby there.
I should have. I picked them to lose the Kentucky game, so I do kick myself for that one.
I was early.
You weren't the only one. That was an inflection moment, and Carolina certainly did what they needed to do in that ball game. Great stuff as always, Hale. TheBigSpur.com. I would I can ask you what you got coming out, but that changes day to day based on the information. So we just continue to encourage everybody to wake up with it and go to bed with it. BigSpur.com.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, I'm probably just going to go watch some American Primeval after hearing you talk about that. You really sold me.
It is
interesting looking.
Itself quick. I mean, it's it's a little hard to stomach some of it. There's no question, but you'll see what I mean.
Yeah,
it's
my
real.
dad said it was pretty gory, so I might be watching that one on my own without my wife.
Yeah, it's it captures you, man. It's hard to know who to pull for. You'll see. It's something.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, boys, appreciate you.
Hey, we might have some more snow next week, so grab the skis and the beanie and the whole 9 yards, man. Buckle up, it's coming.
Get some fresh powder.
You got that right. From our friend Dive Bag Brandon. See ya.